Hey, my name is Jason George. A lot of people know me as an actor, but more important to this conversation is the fact that I'm a dad, and I'm someone whose family has been affected by gun violence. My cousin Daryl was actually murdered. His murderer was never found. I've had family members who are victims of domestic abuse where a gun was involved, and we have a dear family friend who's actually never going to see the light of day outside of prison walls because he perpetrated violence with a gun. And gun safety, when I heard that they were doing this public filibuster, I got excited because it was an opportunity for all of us to weigh in, for you politicians to hear all of us who are pissed and sick and tired of both of you, Democrats and Republicans, fighting and arguing over, trying to win a philosophical debate as opposed to actually trying to solve the problem. The tribal politics does not serve us because a bullet doesn't know what tribe you belong to. The bullet just goes straight and it pierces flesh, period. End of story, full stop. We need to solve the problems. And there's a way. I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment. I come from a military town. I come from Virginia Beach, Virginia. We've had, unfortunately, shootings of our own, major mass shootings of our own. And it's a military town. I'm a military brat. My dad was in the Navy. Everyone I grew up with was military, and you had guns in your family. Guns were in the house. It wasn't an issue, but it's about proper safe storage. It's about all these different things. So I'm not afraid of guns, but I get frustrated when politicians, when people get tribal about this politics. Listen, here's the thing. I had a conversation with a friend who is an avid gun collector. A man I respect immensely. He passed away recently. He was in South Carolina, and over a beer, he was perfectly willing to admit that it's ridiculous that you can plunk down your ID and get a case of beer and a gun, because that's not a good idea. He thought that's not a smart thing. He's perfectly willing to acknowledge that that's a bad idea when we're having a beer together. And then literally a couple of days later, Obama had his town hall on guns. And I watched this man suddenly become tribal about it, shut it down. He would not relinquish a single point, even when good points were made. And there were good points made on all sides of that argument. The point is this. I need you politicians to hear us, all of your constituents across this entire nation, when we say, you got to get creative. And to all of you who are talking about the NRA's talking points of bulletproof glass, steel doors, tape marking off sight lines, even arming teachers. All that can be on the table. I'm willing to let you put all of that on the table, and I believe that logic will dictate what of those are dumb ideas, because some of those are just straight up dumb ideas. But some of them are actually really good ideas. But the problem is every single one of those ideas only deals with the situation after an active shooter is on the scene. None of them deal with how do you prevent an active shooter situation. How do you prevent a mass shooting before it starts? None of those deal with prevention. And look, I'm a brother from the South, so we were told an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You're only talking cure. I need you to talk prevention. I'm willing to talk cure with you. We need some cure. Only a thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Sometimes that's true. But how do you prevent the bad guy from getting a gun? And if you're not willing to have that conversation, really have that conversation, then you're in the way. You're in the way. And the reality is most gun owners want that too. I belong to an organization. I'm on the board of an organization called 97%. And that's because 97% of Americans actually believe in common sense gun laws. The common sense gun laws that you're discussing. And you hit on some of them, but some of them aren't going nearly as far, not from what I'm reading the thing, but I'll take whatever you give me. But the reality is you're playing the politics of it. You're giving just enough that you won't get a bad mark, or getting just enough that people won't get angry with you. There's ways to solve these problems. And we all know what they are. We're talking about background checks. We're talking about red flag laws. We're talking about, look, when you get into the conversation about raising the age to buy an AR-15 to the age of 21, that's cool. But I dig it and I'll take it. But I also think that, like I said, I'm from a military town, and AR-15 is a weapon of war. If you're going to have an AR-15, maybe you need a few weeks of training. They don't just let you in the military and throw an AR-15 in your hand and say, go with God, knock yourself out. You got to train So you know how to use that weapon. So you know how to store that weapon. So you are not a problem with that weapon. I know very few gun owners who have a problem with having to take some training when you get an AR-15 or a military style weapon. Most gun owners I know have no problem with that. Most gun owners I know have absolutely no problem with universal background checks, with no loopholes whatsoever, be it a gun show or anything like that. They got no problems with it because they got no problems. They're responsible gun owners. And all you responsible gun owners out there, I need you to speak up. I need you to be part of this conversation. Don't go hardline. Don't go tribal and suddenly say they're going to try and take the guns. So I need to buy more guns. I need to shut it down. Any conversation, no compromise. The no compromise movement is part of the problem. We need to have a real conversation about how do we really solve this problem. Look, I'm from a military town. Like I said, when a veteran who's in a bad place mentally is suffering from depression, is suffering from PTSD, if they're going to take their life, they're going to take their life with a gun. They're trained military. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. And unfortunately, I have too many people I know who have gone that route or come close. Obama signed an executive order that said, if you're deemed mentally unfit to the point where you cannot control your own finances, where your VA checks don't come to you anymore, they come to some guardian who's put in place of you because you are mentally unfit to handle your own business. He said, if you're that mentally unhealthy, maybe you shouldn't have a gun for your own safety. Maybe you shouldn't have a gun. That makes sense to me. But then when the first major piece of gun legislation that the Trump administration signed was H.J. Res 40 of that Congress. And it basically reversed that order. It made it easier for military veterans who are deemed unhealthy to get guns. It didn't try and say, let's make sure we scrutinize how they're deemed to be mentally unfit so that you can get your money because maybe you need to get your money too. No, they didn't worry about that. They said, we don't care if you get your money or not. We just need to make sure you get your guns. That's a problem. That's not playing politics with this. That's not okay. That's not okay. Solve the problem. My understanding is that that order has been put back in place so that, I mean, look, I know people who are self-espoused gun nuts. They call themselves gun nuts. They love guns. They walk to a gun shop saying, that one, I love that one. And they say, if you are in a dark place, military veterans, maybe give your guns to your buddy. Maybe give your guns to your friend. That's not a hard thing. That's something we should all be able to agree on, right? Red flag laws. If you beat your spouse, if you're willing to beat the person that you claim you love most in this world, you're probably willing to hurt somebody else. 2/3 of all mass shootings, defined as 4 or more people shot, involve domestic abuse. I believe 25% of all mass shooters have been convicted or credibly accused of domestic violence before. You want to protect wife beaters' right to have a gun? I'm good. You know what? You beat your wife? Let's take your gun. It's a wrap. It keeps her safe and it keeps everyone else safe. It just makes sense. These are things that I think we should all be agreeing on. And the reality is the vast majority of Americans do agree. So the question that I have for all the politicians is, what is the sticking point? I understand that you're trying to protect the Second Amendment. I want to protect the Second Amendment. I get it. But protecting it at any and all costs, having a no compromise mindset does not serve us. So please actually be about solving the problem. Get creative. Like I said, you got to undergo training to get an AR-15. That just makes sense to me. I don't know anybody's got a problem with that. It's a weapon of war. Absolute background checks. Look, the database system is, so much of it is in paper form, which is ridiculous. If I go to buy my Claritin D, my Allegra D, I can only get it once every 30 days because the database knows that I bought it in a whole different state within the last month, and it will not let me buy anymore. We don't have the power to do that with guns, to just keep track of who's got what guns and where. Come on. But cops are dying for this, for the ballistics training of what, because the reality is when they do, look, don't believe what you see on TV. As somebody who works in TV, don't believe what you see on TV. The whole scraping and we immediately get ballistics back. We know exactly what gun this came from. It's in a paper form in a warehouse and it's rotted. It has not been mechanized. It's like it's from 1950s. That's a simple thing that can be done. That's a simple thing that can be done. The database, real universal background checks, red flag laws that make sense, that protect the mentally unhealthy from hurting themselves and protect people from domestic abuse. These are things that we all agree on. Raising the age to 21, I'm cool with it. But I think that if you're going to have a weapon of war, you need to be put through some real training. Laws that actually make sure that you store your guns properly. I'm good. There is no one who is a responsible gun owner that I have ever met in my life that has problems with these. We need to make sure that how they're implemented actually make sure it protects people's rights in the whole 9 yards. And you can't just say, your wife accused you of something, so now we're going to take off your guns. It's got to be a credible accusation or a conviction of some kind. That's cool. We can work all that out, but it needs to be on the table and there needs to be a real conversation. Anything short of that is ridiculous. It's playing that politics again, and it's the tribal politics that continues to allow people to get killed. We're the only nation. We cannot claim American exceptionalism if our most exceptional thing is actually in the fact that we kill more people with guns than any other country. I believe in this country. I love this country. And I think we can do this if you stop coming from a place of fear. I'm asking all the politicians. I'm asking all the gun owners to get in the game. I'm asking everyone. I'm asking Democrats to stop. I'm asking liberals to stop saying we need to take all the guns, because that's not the solution either. People need to feel protected in their homes. But right now, every kid in this country has look, I grew up right at the tail end of, where they would do drills for dropping the bomb. If a nuclear war happened, get underneath your desk, like that was really going to help. I was at the very tail end of that. I'm a kid of the 80s. Our kids I don't see the end of this Cold War unless you make it happen. They'll be doing these drills forever. Forget about the fact that we're actually training, the youngest of these unfortunate shooters are 18. They know the playbook because they were trained in school in how to try to avoid the playbook. It's this ridiculous self-fulfilling cycle. We can't solve the problem because we don't want to solve the problem, because you don't want to solve the problem. I'm speaking to you, politicians. The rest of us want you to do something. And I think there's common sense measures that we all agree on. But you won't even start the conversation because it makes you look bad to your constituents, because you're afraid of losing your job. You're so afraid of losing your job that you're not actually doing your job. Get in there, get creative. All ideas on the table, solve the problem. Solve the problem.